Hey there, hi there, ho there, fun food fans. It's Karen Ricks, head chef here at our kitchen classroom, and I am coming to you today to share with you some of the coolest secrets that I have discovered while we have been playing with a new favorite beverage here in our kitchen classroom. And that sweet beverage is golden milk. Are you familiar with golden milk? Go ahead and let me know in the comments if this is something that you've tried before somewhere, always been curious about, never even heard of before, whatever the case is. I want to know, have you heard of it? Have you tried it? Are you curious? In this video, I'm going to introduce you to the ingredients that I've been playing around with as we make a variety of batches of golden milk. And I'm going to share with you a couple of secrets, little chefy tricks, if you will, of how we like to mix it up a little differently than you might find in a few other places to bring out the best and most bold color, as well as, of course, the most delicious flavor in our golden milk. Are you ready to see? Come on down here. Let you take a look at our ingredients, okay? So over here on my counter, you'll see I've got this nice big pitcher of milk. Now for our purposes today, we are using coconut milk, okay? But you can use whatever milk you desire. If you want a cow's milk, goat's or sheep's milk, if you prefer other alternative milks, nut milk like almond or cashews, whatever you like. For purposes of mouthfeel, this does have some fat in it, but in addition, and this is one of our special secrets here, we've also got some coconut oil. Now, if you were using a nut milk, like say almond, I would recommend using an almond oil. If you're going to use a dairy milk, like a cow's milk, you could use butter for your fat here. But this fat is going to help not only bring out the flavors in our other ingredients, it's also going to help bring a silkier, smoother mouthfeel to our beverage. Okay, so we've got our coconut milk here and coconut oil. And then over here on the plate, you can see we've got some whole spices. I've got a cinnamon stick, some green cardamom pods. This is the whole pod. Oops, I'm dropping stuff all over the place here. There you go. You can see our green cardamom pod. I've got 5 of those. I have a whole clove. Okay. And I have a little bit of nutmeg. There's the whole big seed there. We're going to grind it up. And then in here, I've got some black peppercorns, and we're going to grind those up. Now you'll see here on this plate, everything you'll see here are whole spices. Now this is what I prefer to use because in grinding or using them directly whole, I feel like you get the most powerful and pungent flavor. If you have dried spices, you can use those as well. And I'm going to encourage you to play with the ratios, the quantities that you're using if you're using dried spices as compared to the whole spices. Those dried spices tend to be ground and packaged months or sometimes even years before you are actually using them in your kitchen. So they're not going to have the same strength of flavor. So that's something I want to warn you about so you can play around with the quantities yourselves. In keeping with the whole ingredients, you'll see on my cutting board here, I have some slices of fresh ginger root. And I love the little bite, that kind of spice that ginger gives. So we've got a couple of thick slices here. In fact, in order to speed up and to strengthen the absorption of this ginger, I'm going to go ahead and cut it in. So instead of just using the whole slices there, I'm going to dice this up. So we've got lots more teeny tiny pieces. And this is going to allow the ginger flavor to infuse into our coconut milk even more strongly than it would have otherwise. If you don't like as strong a ginger flavor, that's okay. You can use the larger pieces, which are also easier to strain out when you're ready to drink your beverage. Or you can use the dried ginger powder as well. Now you'll notice the one powder that I do have here, and this is the special super secret ingredient that makes your golden milk golden. This is turmeric. And just like we do with all our spices, I'm going to encourage you to give this a nice big inhale. Oh, I love the smell of turmeric, but do you see that dark orange color? Now, if you're using the whole root, it might look kind of similar to a ginger root, except it'll tend to have this more orange color, okay? Now, you might be familiar, like I was already, with turmeric as one of the dried spice ingredients in your traditional Indian curry dishes. Now, for me, this was always a savory ingredient, only until I was introduced to golden milk. It's what gives those curries that bright yellow color. You might even find it in a lot of homeopathic or homemade beauty products, though I will encourage you to use it sparingly and to be careful how you handle it. Okay, this stuff will turn everything, including your skin, yellow. So you want to be careful how you use it. All it takes is a quick Google of turmeric and facials to see some horror stories of people who went a little bit overboard with the turmeric. All right, so you want to see what we're going to do with all of these ingredients, that special something, that little chefy trick that's going to bring out the most flavor of all these glorious spices and give you a beautiful, silky, and powerful beverage. I'm going to move over to the other side of the stove here so that we can get to work. Now, I am the absolute last person who's going to tell you that you need to be drinking golden milk because of all of the health benefits, okay? I'm sure it does have all sorts of great benefits. Things like ginger and turmeric have all sorts of research backing their anti-inflammatory properties, as well as so many other things. But let me tell you, the thing that drew me to the golden milk itself was really the beautiful golden color and all the glorious spices, which I just introduced you to, a lot of the same spices that I use when making a masala chai. I know from experience just how fragrant and how pungent and aromatic all those spices can be. And I was really kind of curious about the addition of turmeric, which, as I told you, I'd only really used in a savory, not a sweet capacity. So that's what attracted me. If you're drawn to all the other health benefits, then you're probably going to like these next little chefy influences that I'm going to demonstrate to you, which are actually techniques that I learned when preparing other Indian curries, okay? So I'm going to start by putting my small saucepan onto the heat. We'll get the flames going underneath it here. Turn to the stove here. And what I've done, this small pot has just been added to the heat, and this is where I'm going to add that spoonful of coconut oil. Okay, now this is just about a tablespoon. It's not that much. We're not going to heat it until it's smoking. What we really want to do is use this little bit of oil to toast our spices. And what that's going to do, and this is something, again, that I do when I'm making other Indian curries, is going to bring out the added aromatic characteristics of our whole dried spices. Now, what you want to remember here is that spices like these, especially when they're whole, especially when they're dried, really derive their powerful aromas from the oils, the essential oils that are embedded within them. Now, these are preserved in the drying process, and they come out when we heat them. But if you heat them in oil, as we're doing here, just a little bit, there we go, with our nutmeg, that is going to really enhance the flavor of them. So I've dropped some nutmeg and the cloves, our green cardamom pods, a cinnamon stick, And the real thing that we want to toast here, our turmeric powder. This is about 2 teaspoons, really, okay? And what's amazing is you can start to see just a little bit. You see how much darker that glorious orange color got. Now, I'm only doing this for a few moments. You can see it's off the heat now, and I'm just making sure that they're all coated in here before I add the last little bit of liquid here. And what I want to do is to coat all of the spices with the oil. Can you see how it's even turning the bottom of my pan yellow? That is the glorious power of this turmeric, okay? The last thing I'm going to add here is some freshly ground black pepper. Now, again, I told you, I'm not really a stickler about all of the health benefits of the different spices that go into this mixture. However, I have read that the black pepper has been proven to increase the absorption of the powerful chemical properties in the turmeric. I happen to like it just like all the extra ginger because of that punch, that spicy kind of kick that it lends to the beverage. So we've got all those spices toasted and completely coated in the oils. And now I'm going to add the coconut milk. Okay, and I'm adding just a little bit here at first to make sure that I can really coat, cover, and help all of those spices that we just toasted to start to dissolve in the liquid. Oh, look, it's already a glorious golden yellow color. Can you see that? Okay, and now that I know that that's all going to dissolve, I'm going to add the rest of this. This is 1 liter, or about 4.5 cups or so of coconut milk. And again, this coconut milk does have some fat in it. It does not have any added sugars. You'll notice I haven't added any sweeteners to this mixture. The main reason is because that's going to change the way that it cooks. And actually, sugars have a tendency to burn in this mixture, and we don't want that. Now, I do like my beverage sweet, so I will add a spoonful of honey to my individual cup when I'm ready to drink it. But I would encourage you not to add your sugars, especially if it's honey, while you're heating it. All the beneficial properties of honey tend to be reduced in their strength and potency if you actually bring them to a full boil, which again, we don't want to do here with this mixture. We just want to bring it up to a simmer. Okay, so I'm just going to continue to stir to make sure that we get everything mixed together here. Now that toasting, like I did of the spices, is really the unique sort of chefy thing that I tend to do here with my beverages. I haven't seen that in some of the other preparations that people have recommended to me of golden milk. This was one of those dishes, this particular beverage, that people had been recommending to me for a while before I actually decided to play with it myself. And it's amazing just how much fun it has been. Now, for me, the addition of milk in any beverage is something that you really want to kind of be careful of when you're heating it on the stovetop like this. For those of you who have ever made rice pudding, or if you've made your tea with milk, or anything where you heat milk on the stove, you know it can come up to a boil and then quickly boil over. Okay, we don't want to do that. We don't want to have that happen. So we're listening very carefully to the simmering of our liquid here. We want it to just come up to where those bubbles are just starting to break on the surface, so that we know it's coming to a simmer. And then what I like to do is actually kill the heat, turn it off, leave it covered, and let the mixture sit and steep, just like a tea. In fact, sometimes you'll hear this or see it referred to as a turmeric tea, rather than golden milk. But I like to let it, just like a tea, to let it steep. And what that's going to do, the longer those whole toasted spices that we tossed in there have a chance to just sit and relax in that warm liquid, the more they're going to release their aromatic oils into the mixture so that it really gives that powerful aroma and flavor to our beverage. Okay, can you hear it? Can you hear what sounds like the beginnings of a simmer? Let's take a peek. Oh, that lovely golden color. It's getting hot, but it's not quite there yet. All right. The last thing I want to remind you before we let this beverage sit and steep and pour our drink is that if you use dried spices, you use the dried turmeric in there. Oops, look at that. I've still got ginger sitting over here. Let's get that into the mixture as well. All right, now my ginger's in there too. Really give it that spicy kick. All right, we use dried powdered turmeric to make our golden milk here. And it is perfectly okay if you use all dried and powdered spices. What you're going to want to be careful of, though, if you do that, is that when it comes time to strain your beverage, you're going to want to make sure that you do so carefully. Now, I happen to like this little tea strainer and keep this by the stove because we use it on almost a daily basis. But especially with those dried spices like that, even those can sneak through a tiny little tea strainer like that. And so what I recommend is that you use something like a coffee filter, or it could even be a paper towel or a napkin. And you can just take that paper sheet and line it inside your strainer and then pour your liquid through. I like to do that with each individual cup so that you're not doing a lot at one time. And what that does is that helps to catch as much of the powdered sediment as possible so that when you're straining out your final beverage, you don't get that gritty texture in your mouth because that doesn't taste too good. That doesn't feel good when you're drinking your beverage. Okay. And after you've done that straining, that's when I like to add the sweetener. If you're going to have your beverage hot, which is one of the ways that I prefer it, then you can stir in a small spoonful of honey or your preferred sweetener of choice and let it dissolve into the warm liquid before you drink. If, however, you plan on drinking it cold, which you can do especially if you're going to make a large batch like this is with a whole liter of milk, then what I like to do is strain the liquids first to remove those solids, especially the powders. And then while it's still warm, I'm going to put this back into our pitcher here before we put it into the refrigerator. That's when you add your sweetener. You stir it in while it's still warm. That way it helps it to dissolve and thoroughly distribute throughout your beverage. And then you can tuck it away in the refrigerator and it'll be good for up to about a week in your refrigerator. I like to keep it tightly covered and to put it closer to the back of the refrigerator where it's going to stay at a cold and constant temperature, especially if you're using a dairy milk. Now, I've never had it last that long in our refrigerator, 2-3 days tops. That's it. And this is gone. It is great to have with your morning breakfast, like you would a hot cup of tea or coffee first thing in the morning. I especially like it cold, iced later on in the evening. It's almost like a sweet dessert sort of a beverage. And it's a wonderful little treat to have iced as a way to kind of end a relaxing and soothing, calming sort of preparation before the end of the night. Listening to that simmering note, and I think our beverage is almost ready to steep. Oh, look at that. Okay. I'm going to direct you over here one more time so that you can see there's a little bit of the oils that have risen to the surface of our liquid. Can you see that? There's some of the ginger and our spices that are floating around in there. But what you can also start to see is little tiny bubbles that are just starting to break around the edges of our liquid. And that's how we know it's almost ready to turn off, and just let it sit and steep. When it comes to that point, I recommend that you leave it alone to steep for at least 10 to 15 minutes before removing it and straining it into another container. Now, if you know you're going to leave this in your refrigerator, you're going to drink this batch over a period of 3, 4, 5 days, you don't even have to do the straining. You can pour it in, whole spices and all, and allow them to continue to steep, to continue to perfume your beverage until you're ready to strain each individual cup. Then you know it could get even stronger and more powerful in flavor the longer you let it sit. But if you know, like me, that it's only going to last a day or two, you can go ahead and strain it and add your sweetener before you tuck it away in the refrigerator. I want to know now, what special little things are you going to add to your golden milk? One of the things that I've done, let's turn off the fire here, this is ready to steep, is to add some other aromatics. I told you these are the same kind of spices that we use in a lot of curries, and especially masala chai. To that, sometimes we also add a little bit more heat. Besides the black peppercorns, you could add something a little spicier like red pepper flakes. Give it an added kick. I've also been playing around with other dried, well, what I used to classify as savory spices, the herb like laurel or bay leaf, you could toss in there as well. If you have black cardamom instead of green, allspice, you could add more or less cloves. I like the nutmeg in there, but that's often something that I'll just grate on top for that added fresh perfume that it gives just when you're about to take that first sip. I'm curious. Oh, and don't forget flowers. Oh, I've got some dried rose buds from one of my teas in the cabinet. That's another amazing way to perfume your golden milk. What special touches are you going to add to yours? I would love to see how you are going to make your special golden milk. I want you to take pictures. I want you to share them all over the World Wide Web. And when you do, be sure to tag Our Kitchen Classroom. On Instagram, you can hashtag Our Kitchen Classroom, and you'll find me there as KarenM.Ricks. And of course, don't forget to check out our website, ourkitchenclassroom.com. Not only will I embed this video, but I will include a list of all of the ingredients that we threw in here today and a couple of suggestions for other things that you might like to add to yours too. I can't wait to hear all about your golden milk adventures. Have fun playing with this one in your kitchen classroom, and we'll see you back again soon.